Okay, so let's dive into a case from the Philippines.
Right.
This one really shows how important it is to be careful about what you're signing,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes. Especially legal documents.
especially legal
Oh, yeah,
documents.
absolutely.
Because this is a case where someone inherited valuable land
Mm-hmm.
from their family and then had it taken away
Oh, wow.
because of forged documents.
Oh, that's awful.
It's really awful.
Yeah.
And this is the case of Conrado Lopez.
Okay.
And his fight for justice went all the way to the Philippine Supreme Court.
All the way to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So interesting.
So this case, it wasn't just about the forgery itself.
Right.
It was also about the role of the notaries.
Yeah, the notary's public.
And their responsibility to make sure that everything is on the up and up.
Yeah, to verify those identities.
Exactly.
And really do their job properly.
Yeah, so let's set the scene here.
Okay.
We are in the Philippines.
All right.
And land ownership is a huge deal in the Philippines.
It really is. It's often tied to family legacy.
It's tied to family legacy and history.
Absolutely.
And this case involves a piece of land that originally belonged to Moises Legaspino,
Okay.
and he had children from 2 marriages,
Okay.
which makes things a little bit more complicated.
Right. So when Moises died, his land was divided among his children from both marriages.
Okay.
One of his sons from the first marriage was named Pedro,
Mm.
and he ended up consolidating some of that land.
Okay.
And then Conrado Lopez enters the picture
Okay.
because his adoptive father, Restituto,
Mm-hmm.
inherited a significant portion of the land,
Okay.
over 24,000 square meters,
Wow.
through Moises's will.
Okay.
And to make sure that Conrado got that land, Restituto wrote a will,
Okay.
which is called a katapusang panugan in Filipino,
Okay.
and he left all of his land to Conrado.
So that's a pretty big inheritance.
Yeah, that's a big piece of property.
And it sounds pretty straightforward, right?
Well, not quite.
Oh.
There was a clerical error in Restituto's will.
Oh, no.
It listed the land as lot number 1718, but somebody later added 1696 in pen below that.
Oh.
And this is where the scheme begins to unfold.
Okay.
We have Judge Rogelio Lucmayon,
Okay.
who is a descendant of Moises from that first marriage,
Okay.
and the son of Pedro, who we talked about earlier.
Oh, so there's a family connection here.
There is a family connection.
Okay.
And he saw an opportunity here with this error
Okay.
to use it to his advantage.
Oh.
So Judge Lucmayon approached Conrado, seemingly wanting to help him sell the land.
Okay, hold on. A judge involved in something shady.
Well, it certainly raises questions about trust and authority.
Yeah, that's a little unsettling.
It is. Okay,
think so.
so here's where these special powers of attorney come into play.
Okay, SPAs.
SPA.
Conrado ended up signing 3 of them,
Yes, he did.
each one more suspicious than the last.
Yes, each one a little bit more suspicious.
All right, so I'm already getting a bad feeling about this.
Okay.
So these SPAs are serious documents.
Or they are very serious documents.
Because they give someone else the power to act for you.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So the first SPA seemed legitimate on its face.
Okay.
Conrado authorized some of Judge Lucmayon's friends
No.
to sell the land,
Okay.
and that SPA was notarized by a lawyer named Adi Mata.
All right. So far, so good.
So far, so good.
Or so it seems.
Or so it seemed.
What about the other 2?
Well, this is where we start to see some red flags.
Okay.
The second SPA named Judge Lucmayon himself as the attorney, in fact.
So he's giving him power.
He's giving him power over the land.
Okay.
And here's the catcher. Conrado claims that he never even appeared before the notary.
What?
For this one, Adi Sentillas.
Wait, so his signature might be forged on this.
That's a huge deal.
That is a huge deal.
Yes.
Ow.
And then it gets more complicated.
Okay.
The third SPA
Mm-hmm.
had a sneaky little clause hidden in it,
Oh, no.
a waiver of rights.
Oh, wow.
And once again, Conrado claims that he never appeared before Adi Mata to sign this document.
So it seems like someone was taking advantage of him
It seems that way.
and maybe forging his signature
Potentially.
to get control of his inheritance.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable.
It is a very complicated case.
So we've got a judge potentially involved in a scheme to steal land
Right.
from his own relative,
Hmm.
using forged documents,
Right.
and possibly manipulating these notaries.
Yeah.
What happened next?
Well, things took an even darker turn.
Oh, no.
A deed of sale appeared,
Okay.
supposedly signed by Conrado, transferring the entire inheritance to a woman named Laredo Laconda
Okay.
back in 2004.
Wow.
And this deed was notarized by another lawyer,
Okay.
Adi Abellana.
Okay, so now we've got 3 notaries involved.
That's right, 3 notaries.
Right.
However, Conrado insists that he never signed this deed and he never met Adi Abellana.
Wow.
So the lower courts, what did they have to say about this?
Yeah, what do they think?
Well, the regional trial court actually ruled in favor of Conrado and said that that deed of sale was null and void,
Okay.
but the Court of Appeals overturned that decision. Oh.
They pointed to Conrado's signature on the SPAs as proof that he had given consent
Okay.
to sell the land.
Even though he hadn't signed the final deed.
Right. Even if he hadn't personally signed that final deed.
So even though the lower courts thought that there was something fishy going on,
Right.
they didn't really grasp what was happening.
It seems that way.
Okay.
So Conrado's fight didn't end there.
Okay.
He appealed to the highest court in the land,
The Supreme Court.
the Supreme Court.
Okay.
And the issue before the Supreme Court wasn't just about the potential forgery.
Right.
It was about the role of the notaries.
Yeah. Did they do their jobs right?
Exactly. Did they verify his identity?
Yeah.
Did they follow the procedures?
Uh-huh.
These questions are at the heart of this legal battle.
So this is really complicated.
It's very complex.
It's like an onion. You peel back one layer and there's another layer.
Exactly, and it keeps going.
Yeah, so we've got a potential land grab, forged documents,
Right.
questionable notarial practices.
Yeah, family connections.
Absolutely.
This is really intense.
It's a very interesting case.
So what did the Philippine Supreme Court ultimately decide?
Well, they issued their decision on March 4, 2020,
Okay.
in the case called Lopez v. Mata,
Mm-hmm.
GR number 220763.
Okay.
And let me tell you, it's a really fascinating read
I bet.
that sheds light on the importance of notarial practice.
I can't wait to hear about this Supreme Court decision.
Right.
What did they focus on?
Okay.
And what were the consequences for all these notaries?
All right, let's get into it.
On the edge of my seat.
Well, the Supreme Court really zeroed in on the fact that these notaries were using Conrado's Community Tax Certificate, or
Okay.
CTC,
Yeah.
as the sole proof of identity.
The CTC. Okay.
And under Philippine law, a CTC on its own is not considered competent evidence of identity for these notarial acts.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't a CTC be enough? I mean, it's an official document, right?
It is an official document, but
Yeah.
the 2004 rules on notarial practice in the Philippines, they're very clear
Okay.
about what constitutes valid proof of identity.
Okay.
A notary needs to see a government-issued photo ID
Oh,
or have some credible witnesses
right.
who can personally vouch for the person signing.
Okay.
And the notaries in this case didn't follow these rules.
So it sounds like the Supreme Court was basically saying
Yeah.
that these notaries were cutting corners
Cutting corners, yeah.
and not taking their responsibilities seriously.
Yeah, they were not being as diligent as they should have been.
Yeah, and the court really emphasized
Right.
that notarization isn't just a formality.
Yeah, it's not just a rubber stamp.
Yeah.
It makes that private document into a public one.
Okay.
It gives it legal weight.
Right.
It makes it admissible in court.
Right. So it's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
And if the notaries aren't doing their job right,
Right.
then that undermines the whole system.
It undermines the whole legal system.
Yeah, because if you can't trust a notarized document,
Exactly.
then why even have notaries?
That's a great point. Right.
What is the point if we can't trust them?
Yeah, and the Supreme Court connected this back to
Yes.
Canon 1 of the Code of Professional Responsibility
Absolutely.
for lawyers in the Philippines.
Right, which says that lawyers have to be honest
Right.
in their dealings.
Yeah.
And when a lawyer is acting as a notary,
Mm-hmm.
they're essentially vouching for
Yeah.
the document and the person signing.
So notarizing something without checking the ID
Yeah.
is a huge breach of trust.
It's a major breach of trust.
Wow.
And it violates their ethical obligations.
Okay, so in this case,
Yeah.
the Supreme Court was looking at whether the notaries were negligent or even complicit in the forgery.
Potentially. What did they find?
They found that two of the notaries,
Oh.
Adi Sentillas and Adi Mata,
Okay.
had violated the rules on notarial practice
Okay.
by not properly verifying Conrado's identity.
Uh-huh.
And the court reprimanded them for what they called their patent carelessness and indifference to their duties as notaries public.
So that's pretty serious.
Yeah, it is.
What about Adi Abellana,
Okay.
the one who notarized the deed of sale?
Right.
Remember, Corrado says he never even met that guy.
Exactly.
So that raises a lot of questions
It does.
about that notarization.
Huge red flags.
Yeah, what did the Supreme Court do about that?
Well, the court found Adi Abellana's actions especially bad.
Okay.
Not only did he notarize a document that Conrado claims he never signed,
Right.
but he also didn't submit his notarial reports
Oh, wow.
for the year 2004.
So he wasn't just negligent.
Right.
It seems like he was really disregarding his duties.
It seems like he was not taking his job seriously.
Wow, okay.
And this is a violation of the Administrative Code of 1917,
Okay.
which requires those notaries to keep detailed records
Makes sense.
of all their notarial acts.
And the Supreme Court really did not like that.
They did not like that.
They found that he was grossly negligent
Yes.
and that he violated the notarial law
That's right.
and the Code of Professional Responsibility.
Yes.
So what were the consequences for these notaries?
Okay.
Did they just get a slap on the wrist, or was it more serious?
It was more serious than a slap on the wrist.
Okay.
Attorney Sentillas and Mata, they each got a 6-month suspension
From practicing law?
from practicing law.
Wow.
They had their notarial commissions revoked,
Oh, wow.
and they can't be notaries public for 2 years.
So that's a big hit to their professional reputation.
That's a huge blow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about Eddie Abellana?
Well, he got the same 6-month suspension
Okay.
and revocation of his notarial commission,
Okay.
but he was only prohibited from serving as a notary public for 1 year.
Okay.
It seems like the court took into account that he'd already been sanctioned before
Okay.
and maybe didn't want to impose double jeopardy.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's a nuance.
That's the legal nuance.
So even though Conrado eventually settled
Right.
his case about the land,
Uh-huh.
these notaries still face consequences
Yeah, did it?
from the Supreme Court.
That's right.
That's really powerful.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it sends a message about accountability.
It does. It really highlights this legal principle that disciplinary action against lawyers
Yeah.
isn't just about resolving a dispute between two people.
Right. It's about the whole system.
It's about protecting the integrity of the legal profession
Yeah.
and maintaining public trust
Exactly.
in the system.
Yeah.
So even though Conrado might have found some resolution in his case,
Yeah.
the court recognized the broader harm that was done.
By the notaries.
Yeah, by those notaries' actions.
Yeah. And so they took steps to prevent it from happening again.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, this whole case has really got me thinking about how vulnerable we can be when we just don't understand what our rights are or how these legal processes work.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It can be really overwhelming, especially when you're dealing with something like a family inheritance.
Yeah. Especially when it's something so emotionally charged, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and that's why I think this case is such a good reminder that knowledge is power.
Yeah.
If Conrado had been more aware of his rights and the procedures for these notaries
Right.
and, those red flags to watch out for,
Yeah.
things might have gone differently.
Yeah. So what can our listeners do
Right.
to protect themselves in situations like this?
Well, first and foremost,
Okay.
never sign anything you don't understand.
Yeah.
I mean, it might seem obvious, but,
Right.
it's easy to rush through things, especially when you're dealing with someone you trust.
Yeah, like a family member.
Like a family member or a judge.
Uh,
So ask questions,
yeah.
no matter how silly they seem.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be afraid to push back if something feels wrong.
It's better to ask too many questions
Oh, yeah.
than to not ask enough
Absolutely.
and regret it later.
Yeah, and if you're dealing with something really complicated, legally speaking,
Right.
especially like land ownership or inheritance,
Yeah.
it's so crucial to get a lawyer. Get some legal advice.
Yeah.
Find a lawyer you trust,
Mm-hmm.
someone who can explain things to you in plain English.
Right. And fight for you.
And advocate for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can be your guide
Exactly.
through this complicated legal world.
Yeah, you need someone on your side.
Absolutely.
This case also made me think about the accountability of the notaries.
Yeah.
They play such an important role
Right.
in making sure that legal documents are legitimate.
Huge role.
But we see how easily things can go wrong.
Oh, yeah. Things can go south very quickly.
And the Supreme Court
Mm-hmm.
sent a strong message here
Yes, they did.
that notaries are going to be held accountable.
They will be held responsible.
But do we need even more oversight?
Well, there's always room for improvement
Right.
when it comes to overseeing and regulating.
Yeah, like what kind of things are you thinking?
Well, maybe stricter requirements to become a notary.
Okay.
Maybe continuing education to keep them updated
Yeah.
on all the laws.
That makes sense.
And maybe some stricter audits
Okay.
to make sure they're following the rules.
Yeah, because the whole legal system relies on them doing their jobs, right?
It really does. The public trust depends on those notaries.
Yeah. So we got to make sure they're doing things the right way.
We do.
This case, even though it's in the Philippines,
Right.
I think it has lessons for everyone.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Anyone who deals with legal documents.
Absolutely, no matter where you are.
It shows how important it is to be careful,
Yeah.
to do your research,
Mm-hmm.
to get expert advice,
Yeah.
and to understand the power dynamics.
Yeah, the power dynamics at play.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real cautionary tale.
It is.
That reminds us to be informed.
Yes.
To be proactive and to be vigilant.
Yeah, you got to protect yourself.
You do. You have to protect your rights and your interests.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into notary nightmares,
okay,
what's a final thought you want to leave with our listeners?
Be proactive.
Okay.
Don't wait till you're in a crisis to learn about your legal rights.
Yeah.
Take some time to educate yourself.
Yeah.
Build relationships with good legal professionals.
Yeah.
And remember, knowledge is your most powerful asset.
Yes.
When it comes to dealing with the law.
It's true. Well, this case is a reminder that we might hope for the best in people.
Right.
But we got to be prepared for the worst.
We do.
Understanding the law, being aware of the pitfalls, can really save you a lot of heartache in the future.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We hope you found it informative.
Yeah.
And maybe even a little bit empowering.
A little bit empowering.
Remember to like and subscribe for more fascinating cases and legal insights.
Yes, please do.
Until next time, stay informed.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
And stay curious.
And stay curious. We'll see you